doesn't love a good fantasy series? Ever since Tolkien wrote The Lord of the Rings over 71 years ago, a number of fantasy works inspired by it have come out. These books, movies, TV shows, and video games have allowed us to traverse through intricately crafted magical worlds filled with monsters and people of varied fantastical races, allowing us to escape from the mundane humdrum of our daily lives. Fantasy evokes the same feelings that we got listening to stories that our grandparents told us as kids by our bedside, only now, these stories contain tales of dragons, evil wizards, and epic tales of heroism. These worlds have entire histories written about the land and the people that dwell within, making them feel as real as it gets. The Wheel of Time TV show is based on a series of novels with the same name, written by authors Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson. As the name suggests, this fantasy world is governed by the concept of a cyclical nature of time, which, for better or worse, makes its denizens believe that they're trapped within a prison of sorts, lacking the necessary faculties to govern their own fate. While some view it as the necessary cycle of life and rebirth, others seek to escape it by destroying the world order. This is a concept which is pervasive throughout the Hindu and Buddhist belief system, where one age ends and a new one begins until time goes around in a full circle and starts again. In this world, men are forbidden from wielding magic as they risk getting corrupted by what is known as the dark. The world of magic is primarily dominated by women. However, the greatest Chandler, as they're called, was once a man who broke the world, setting it back thousands of years. This man, named the Dragon, is reborn every age and holds the destiny of the world in his hands. With the Dark Lord on the rise once more, the dragon of this age must choose whether they will mend the world or follow in the footsteps of their predecessor and bring the world to ruin. The Wheel of Time is one of the highest-selling fantasy novels ever, having sold over 90 million copies worldwide. So, in today's marvelous video, we'll be exploring the various races that inhabit the world of Amazon's original TV series, The Wheel of Time. From the fair to the foul, we'll leave no stone unturned so that you can walk away from this video with a much greater understanding of this stellar fantasy series. So, without further ado, let's dive right into the fantastical world of the Wheel of Time, and may the light be with you. Humanoid races. Aiel, honor-bound desert warriors from the Threefold Land. The Aiel are a group of people that dwell in the deserts known as the Threefold Land, which lies in between the Westlands and Sharan in the east. They are easily distinguishable from the rest of the races due to their exceptional height, pale eyes, and auburn hair. The modern Aiel that we come across in the series were descendants of a group called the Dashane Aiel from the Age of Legends. They are also known as the People of the Dragon, as they primarily served the Aes Sedai during the bygone ages. The group would splinter into the Gen Aiel, or the True Dedicated, and the Tuatha On, the Traveling People, aka the Tinkers. The Way of the Leaf that forbade violence and propagated a pacifistic way of life was maintained by both groups. The modern Aiel would, however, take up the spear, as it can be used for killing as well as for other purposes. They are a fierce warrior race who are bound by codes of honor. A modern-day Aiel will also never touch a sword because it has no purpose other than killing. The ancestors of this group originated from a group of 4 Aiels that had killed raiders who had captured 2 women. Even though they were treated as outcasts more and more, Aiels began joining this new group. This group of Aiels that would kill for self-defense continued to stick with the Gen Aiel and protect them despite their protestations. As they journeyed through the spine of the world into the Aiel Waste, they were helped by a group of people that would later form the kingdom of Cairhien. This help came in the form of water, which was a precious commodity in the wastelands and was freely given. This perhaps is also the origin of the Aiel's sacred oath of water, where the Aiels make agreements that are sworn over water. Eventually, the Gen Aiel would die out, leaving only their holy city, Rhuidean. The remaining Aiel prospered in the wastelands and came to be the group of people we're familiar with today. The Tuatha On, despite being Aiel, are reviled by the rest of their kindred for being oath-breakers, as they had abandoned the sacred duty bestowed upon them of protecting certain objects from the corruption of the male Aes Sedai as the world was being broken. The Tuatha On wanted to search for the peaceful life they had lived during the Age of Legends. They called this the Search for the Song. The regular Aiels do not associate with them and allow them passage through the wastes undisturbed. The modern Aiel, however, have all but forgotten their ancient heritage and history, with the knowledge now only lying with their leaders. The Way of the Leaf is non-existence, and no semblance of the pacifist society that they once were remains outside of the Gaishane and their unwillingness to wield a sword. The Aiel are governed by a moral code called the Jaito, which translates to honor and duty in the Old Tongue. Public displays of affection are frowned upon by them, while nudity in practical settings generally isn't. Both men and women are allowed to become soldiers in the community, though only men can assume leadership roles. However, property is always transferred through a matrilineal manner. A man can never ask a woman's hand for marriage, as it is the woman's prerogative to do so, although he can make his interest known to her. Aiels also practice polygamy, where a man can marry multiple women. The wives are known as sister wives and must maintain an amicable relationship. There are 13 total tribes of the Aiel, and together they control who enters and leaves their territory. Feared and often misunderstood, the Aiel are a strong people who will suffer no taint on their honor, and all who attempt this do so at their own peril. Otha on Mier, Sea Folk, seafaring traders with strict hierarchy and ritual. The Otha on Mier are a people who belong to the sea. They try and live their lives as much as they can on board their ships. Seldom do they venture out on land unless dire need drives them. The Otha on Mier live, marry, and die on their ships, such is the life that they desire for themselves. Thanks to their dark complexion, they are considered exotic by mainlanders whom they trade with on occasion. As a people, they are ruled by an individual called the Mistress of the Ships, who serves as a queen of sorts. Her consort, who holds the title Master of the Blades, was responsible for overseeing trade and security. Under them operate the Wave Mistresses and the Sword Masters, who have the same function and role as them, but to a lower degree. The Sea Folk's hierarchy is expressed in many complex ways, one of which is the number of rings they have on their body, typically on the nose and ears, and the chain that hangs in between them. Looking at the number of medals that hang on this chain is a good indication of their social standing. The Sea Folk believe in the prophecy of the Coramor, which is their take on the legend of the dragon reborn. According to an ancient prophecy, the Coramor would lead the Otha on Mier to conquer all the seas of the world and glory beyond their wildest dreams. As such, they are more than eager to serve the dragon reborn. The Chandlers in their society are called the Windfinders. They're adept at bending wind and water to their will, which they primarily use to sail their ships. If a man is found to be capable of channeling, they're given two choices. Either they tie a stone from their leg and walk off the bow of their ship and drown voluntarily, or they must be marooned on a barren island with no food or supplies. The second choice is considered disgraceful to choose for obvious reasons. The Otha an Mier often sends the weakest of their channelers to the Aes Sedai so that the Order remains under the impression that they're not capable of producing powerful channelers. The Sea Folk are hardy, and any contract made with them is a serious and binding affair steeped in formality. With an unmatched navy, the Otha an Mier might not officially rule all the seas in the world, but there's not much that could stop them if they decided that's what they wanted. Borderlander, blight-bordering, battle-hardened warriors. Out of all the nations and kingdoms within the realms of the Wheel of Time, none live with danger so close to them as the Borderland nations. The Borderlanders are a group of people that dwell in the Westland nations, which lie in the furthest north and border the Great Blight emanating from the Eye of the World. While the current number of nations that constitute the Borderland is 4, there used to be a time when there were 10. There were originally 2 kingdoms in the Borderlands called Jeremide and Autumnel. After the latter collapsed during the Trolloc Wars, Jeremide would fall not long after. Out of the ashes of these 2 countries arose Bashrande, El-Salam, and Ram Dashar until they too were conquered by a man known as Artur Hawkwing. He would split his new empire into 5 provinces: Saldea, Kandor, Arafel, Shinar, and Malkir. The 5 provinces declared their independence during the War of the 100 Years, forming an alliance with each other against the threat of blight and any southern invasion. Malkir would be destroyed due to internal political intrigue, opening them up for an invasion. Following its destruction, Shinar would take its place as the easternmost borderland nation. For nearly 3 millennia, the folks of these nations have safeguarded the rest of the world from the blight and the Shadowspawns. They have a martial society where men and women are expected to be able to defend themselves in times of need. You won't find a Borderlander without a weapon on their person, it's just part of their identity. Out of all the places, the Aes Sedai are treated with welcome here, as it's part of the Borderland philosophy that all of humankind must be united against the Shadow. The Borderlands and its people have safeguarded humanity for generations and have paid the price for it with blood. They value honor and discipline above all and are constantly vigilant due to the ever-looming threat that lies just across their borders. Kerhienen, Masters of political intrigue and Deus Daemon. In the eastern central lands of the Westland, bordering the spine of the world, lies the kingdom of Caer Hienin. When the conqueror Arthur Hawkwing united the lands of Tova to his homeland of Shandal to form the imperial province of Caer Hienin, the nobles would stage a coup not shortly after Hawkwing's death. The strongest of these noblemen, named Lord Matrain Comkill, would emerge victorious in this brutal conflict and become the first king of Caer Hienin. According to ancient legend, the Caer Hienin were descendants of the group of people that provided water to the Aiel as they entered the Threefold Lands. If you're looking for a taste of Game of Thrones in this series, you can find plenty of it within Caer Hienin, where political intrigue is a part of their culture. Deus Daemar, or the Great Game as it's called, refers to intricate power struggle in the form of political and social maneuvering that the great houses of the kingdom engage in to increase their social standing or cause the downfall of their opposing houses. The Deus Daemar is so woven into their culture that even the servants of the great houses engage in a version of it amongst themselves. The nobles are so paranoid that even the slightest nonchalant gesture might cause a series of retaliatory actions. The way to outmaneuver the game and its players, however, is fairly simple. The answer is to be plain and honest about your intentions, as this is the last thing they expect, causing them to be caught off guard. The Caer Hienin are usually not very tall and have a peculiar pale complexion. There's a clear hierarchy between the aristocracy and the rabble. However, for 2 days every year, in the festival known as the Feast of Lights, all such boundaries are removed. During this time, the two classes can intermingle in any form of carnal pleasure. However, at the end of the 2 days, life resumes as if nothing ever happened. The people of Caer Hienin are a group with a rich history and culture. After almost having their nation wiped out by the Aiel due to the foolishness of their king, Lamon Damodred, in what would come to be known as the Aiel Wars, the Caer Hienin standard, with its golden rising sun against a field of blue, continues to fly high to this day. Domani, charismatic and seductive negotiators from Arad Doman. Located between the Mountains of Mist and the Erith Ocean lies the nation called Arad Doman. Founded by 3 individuals, namely Bastine al-Madar, Jalam Nasri, and Aran Nawaz, with the help of an informal council of merchants, with Shilan Nasri taking on the title of the first king of Arad Doman. The Doman king is always chosen by the council of merchants, which is mostly comprised of women. The king holds absolute power, but can be forced to abdicate if a vote is passed by the council of merchants. The king, however, is never chosen from one of the great merchant houses and can only be chosen from the aristocracy, who are called bloodborne. Domani women's attire is such that in most lands outside of theirs, it's considered scandalous. Mothers raise their daughters from a young age to become proficient in the art of seduction. Few can claim to have bested a Domani woman in a bargain, and they are considered to be femme fatales of the same level as the women of the Atha'an Meir. Having been raised under such circumstances, men of the Domani are considered largely immune to seduction. This could also be partly because they themselves are taught the male variation of the art of seduction. In their custom, giving an earring to the opposite sex is considered as a sign of being lovers. The Domani are master craftsmen as well and are well known for producing high-quality glassware and carpets, but their most prized possessions are their horses, called Razor, which they seldom sell to outsiders. The armies are composed of levies from the retainers to the crown, as the council doesn't trust the king to maintain a standing army that would be capable of challenging their authority. An interesting fact about the upper-class Domani is that they meet their retainers and dish out orders while in their bath, as they believe that the bath allows the masters to properly relax and make good decisions. Their sigil is a hand grasping the blade of a downward-facing sword. Illianer, justice-driven seafarers known for beards and heroism. Illian is a city-state ruled by a king and a council of 9. It boasts the largest port in the world, due to which the people of Illianer have prospered greatly for generations. Its people participate in what is called the Great Hunt, which is exactly what it sounds like, a great hunt for the legendary Horn of Valerie, said to summon legendary heroes from the grave to fight on the wielder's behalf. Their army is renowned for their elite fighting group called the Illianer Companions. This fighting group is unique in the fact that even a foreigner can rise to its highest rank. The men of Illian traditionally sport a beard but no mustache. They also wear long coats that have their collars raised, and their boots are decked with gold and silver. As for the women, they wear distinctly wide-brimmed hats kept in place by scarves that they drape around their neck. The method of tying the scarf ranges from mere decoration to functional usage. Much like the men, women wear slippers with heavy works of gold and silver on them. The people of Ilian also celebrate a number of festivals, including the Feast of Abram, the Feast of Maya, and the Feast of Lanterns, to name a few. While Ilian does have its own political intrigue, they largely operate as friends of justice and consider all their actions are done to propagate the same. However, the denizens of the Tyr might beg to differ, as they have been at constant war with them over oil trading rights for years. Ilian looks to have been inspired by real-life Greek city-states and their culture. Seanchan. Rigid imperialists from across the ocean use domain. The Seanchan are a fearsome race that hails from a land across the Aerith Ocean, some 3,000 leagues away from the Westlands. The origins of this empire are steeped in mystery to many people, but we know that after the Trolloc Wars, Arthur Hawkwing sent his son Luthair Mordwain across the sea with a mighty fleet to conquer the lands that we call Seanchan. It was thought that this fleet had either been decimated by the natives of that land or had been taken by the sea, but the truth of the matter was quite contrary to popular belief. Luthair Mordwain had managed to land successfully on the shores of Seanchan and thenceforth embarked on a brutal conquest for unification, just like his father had in the mainland. It is said it took Luthair and his descendants 800 years to complete what is known as the Conquest. By the end of this, not only had they unified and conquered Seanchan, they had become Seanchan themselves. The empire continues to be ruled by the pureblood descendants of Luthair, and by extension, Arthur Hawkwing himself to this day. Their invasion of the Westland, therefore, begins making sense in light of this new information, as they simply believe that they are taking back the lands that rightfully belonged to them at some point. It's the reason why this invasion is called Corrine, which in the Old Tongue loosely translates to the return. The Seanchan people are divided by a rigid class system, where at the top sits the royal family and the aristocrats, who are called the Blood. Below them lies the commoners, and even further below lies the slaves, also known as Da Covail. While in most societies you would think that the slaves would make up the lowest rung of society, here it is the domain who hold that position. The Bloods trace their lineage to Arthur Hawkwing and are further divided into two categories, the low blood and the high blood. To be of the blood, as it's called, is a great privilege. Initially, only true descendants were allowed to be called this, but over time, there have been a few others who have been raised to this station. To be made of the blood is considered to be the greatest honor for a commoner. Slavery is also an intricate part of their culture, but the notion of this practice, while quite similar to what we understand about it, is also quite different at the same time. The Da Covail, which translates to those who are property, usually perform menial jobs for their owners. However, some slaves whose owners are of the blood of the Empress hold powerful positions in the empire and are called the Sojin. These slaves are considered to be of a much higher rank than the free common folk. The domain that we mentioned earlier are women capable of channeling that are broken mentally to become subservient tools to be used and controlled by the empire. They're not even considered human and are kept in cells that are referred to as kennels. To mate with one is considered a perverse act akin to bestiality. The Seanchan believe that one power is absolute and no one is worthy of channeling it. Hence, any that are capable of doing so need to be controlled. They do so by binding these women using a terre angreal called the Adam, which is controlled by a leash by trained women called the Suldam. The golden eagle of the Seanchan Empire is feared wherever it appears, for what follows is utter domination and subjugation. Tar Valoners. Educated citizens near the White Tower. The Tar Valoners are denizens of the famed city of Tar Valon, the bastion of the enigmatic Aes Sedai. The city is led by the Amerlin Seat, who is helped by her daughters and an administrative council in the day-to-day running of the city. Tar Valoners are usually a mixed group of people who have all settled within the city for various reasons. Some seek the protection of the Aes Sedai, while others have arrived to partake in trade that is abundant in the town, since it connects the Borderlands with the prosperous southern nations. As mentioned before, since it's the seat of the Aes Sedai and a hub for trade, there's no particular tradition or homogenized culture that defines a Tar Valoner. Taraboners, veiled scholars from a torn but proud land. Bordering the Aerith Ocean on the western coast of the Westland lies the nation of Tarabon. They are ruled by a dual system of king and panarch who rule this port nation in tandem. The Taraboner trace their lineage back to the Age of Legends, and a part of the panarch's palace is indeed from that time. The nation was formed by 3 retainers of Arthur Hawkwing, with one of them becoming the first king and the other becoming a panarch following the death of their third companion. The panarch is always a woman and is elected by an assembly of lords whose only power is the election of a panarch. Kingship, however, is passed down in a more traditional fashion from father to son. They hold almost equal administrative and military power, and some might even say the Panarch has a slight upper hand. They primarily export high-quality olive oil and fringed rugs. The people have golden hair and brown eyes, with both men and women covering half of their face with a translucent veil. The clothing of the women is as risque as the Domani, while the men wear baggy trousers and embroidered coats. There is no visual distinction between the clothes of the high and the lowborn except for the fabric. They are also famed for making fireworks, the secret for which they will even guard with murder. Their guild, called the Guild of Illuminators, was originally found in the capital city of Tanchico, but was destroyed. The nation itself was conquered by the Seanchan at some point in time and is led by a new king and Panarch who were installed by the Empire after their former leaders were killed for refusing to submit. Tairen, proud nobility and cavalry from Tyr, disdain channelers. Belonging to the richest kingdom in all of the realm called Tyr, the Tairen are a race divided heavily on the basis of class. While class structures do exist through the various nations of the realm, very few can match the rigidity with which it is followed in Tyr. The difference between the haves and the have-nots is massive amongst the Tairen. The nobility views the common folk as not even human, let alone equals. Depending on which social strata one belongs to, the Tairen lead vastly different lives. While the nobility lead their lives in opulent mansions and palaces, with paved roads and shops selling the finest wares and delectable cuisine from around the world, beyond their high walls, the common folk dwell in abject filth and squalor. Muddy streets line the homes and markets for the common folk, with crime and violence rampant. The Tairen men are known for sporting short beards that are oiled and styled to a point. As expected of the nobility, they wear fine silks that have been embroidered by the finest craftsmen, while the common folk wear ordinary tunics with a flopped hat to keep the rain off their head. Due to a prophecy that has stated the Stone of Fear will never fall until the dragon has been reborn, the Tairen hold a deep contempt for anything that has something to do with one power. This naturally translates to their disdain towards channelers. Tyr was originally ruled by a council of high lords. However, ironically, the current king is someone who has been installed in his place by the Dragon Reborn and the rebel noblemen. Despite its political and social upheaval, the nation continues to prosper and remains one of the oldest bastions of humanity. Non-human races and shadow entities. What would a fantasy world be without its fair share of non-human races and entities? The Wheel of Time has a number of these creatures, both good and bad, that have affected not just human life, but the course of history as well in some cases. We will now discuss the non-human races and shadow entities that appear throughout this series. Ogier, peaceful, long-lived giant beings from the shedding. Despite their giant size and strength and inhuman appearance, the Ogier, often called ogres by common folk, are actually gentle, peace-loving giants. Ogiers are extremely long-lived creatures who, barring any sickness or injury, can live up to almost 500 years. Loyal, who we meet in the story, is already 90 years old and is considered a teenager of sorts by others of his kind. They're expert masons and stoneworkers, as well as master gardeners. Some of the sturdiest and finest structures around the world have been built by the Ogiers. The average height of the Ogier is between 7 to 11 feet tall, with the males being just a bit taller than their female counterparts. The Ogiers from the mainland live in settlements known as steadings, which are comprised of around 6,000 of their kind. They love debating about scholarly matters and hate being rushed. The mainland Ogiers are also peace-loving in nature and abhor violence. The same, however, cannot be said about their kin that dwell in the Seanchan Empire. While it's unclear how they fit into their society, we do know that a contingent of the Empress's elite guard is made up of only Ogiers called the Gardeners. The mainland Ogier have all but forgotten their proud martial traditions due to their pacifistic nature. However, if the threat of the shadow arises, Ogiers don't hesitate to march against it. They're slow to anger, but once someone manages to accomplish the monumental task of angering one, the instigators are lucky to come out of that situation alive. The Ogiers are also famous for their waygate, which is present near every Ogier steading. These waygates were, however, not all built by them, but were instead gifted to them by the male Aes Sedai for giving them refuge in their standings following the breaking of the world. These waygates are portals that allow access to the ways, allowing for travel between continents to take place in mere moments. The Ogiers are one of the most prominent non-human communities in existence and are among the few that maintain a good relationship with humans. Wolves, psychic animals who communicate via imagery. The wolves in this series, unlike in other fantasy works, are actually very much sentient as a species. They're able to communicate with others of their kind using psychic imagery. Amongst humans, there are certain individuals who are capable of communicating with them and develop wolf-like traits called the Wolf Brothers. Wolves are able to traverse Tel Aran Rihod, or the world of dreams, upon their death. Wolves are able to clearly remember their past lives and, just like humans, are reborn into the world each time they die. However, if they were to be killed by a Darkhound or during their sojourn in the dream world, this cycle is broken forever. Darkhounds are created through the twisting of the souls of the wolves by the Shadow. While the Darkhounds are rightly reviled, the wolves are often treated in the same fashion as their so-called Shadow brothers. In truth, the wolves harbor deep-seated hatred for the dark and its creatures, in particular the Myrddraal, also known as Fades. They revere Rand al'Thor as the Shadow Killer and will willingly follow him in the Tarmon Gaidon, or the final battle. Eelfin, fox-like beings from another dimension grant twisted wishes. Moving on from sentient wolves, let's now talk about extra-dimensional fox-like humanoids. The Eelfin, as they're called, dwell in another dimension that can only be accessed through the Tower of Genje, or the twisted redstone doorframe in the city of Rhuidean. They have a fox-like appearance, leading people who have encountered them to dub them as the Fox People. There seems to be some sort of hierarchy in their society, with contracts and deals being a major part of their interaction with the humans. They're capable of granting 3 wishes to people, but the price for this service must be negotiated prior, or else they will set their own demands, which usually don't turn out to be great for the person seeking to deal with them. While not inherently evil, they're not bound by the same sense of morality as humans, and their actions might cause harm and make them appear as evil. It's speculated that the Eelfin feed on the emotions of humans, particularly negative ones. Therefore, it makes sense that they would put humans who visit them through ordeals that would elicit such emotions for them to be able to feed on it. Death is very much a possibility if one doesn't bargain wisely with an Eelfin. Aelfin, snake-like beings that answer questions about the future. Just like the Eelfin, the Aelfin too dwell in another dimension that can be accessed through the Tower of Genje, or the twisted redstone doorframe in the Stone of Tyr. Just like their fox-like cousins, they also have a bestial appearance, in their case that of a snake. They are, therefore, also known as the Snake People. Unlike their wish-granting kindred, the Aelfin will instead answer any 3 questions posed to them about the future. Frivolous questions often result in them harming the individual asking the question, so care must be taken in what is asked. Questions regarding the dark often lead to death and madness. They don't require anything additional like the Eelfin for their service, choosing instead to feed on the memories and experience of the questioner. No matter what answers they provide you with, the Eelfin cannot be fully trusted, as they have been known to work with both heroes and Forsaken in the past. Trollocs, brutal beastmen bred by the Shadow. During the epic battle known as the War of Shadows that took place at the end of the Age of Legends, Trollocs were created by one of the Forsaken, known as Agenor, to bolster the ranks of the Dark One's army. Made by engineering human genetics with that of beasts like boars, bears, and eagles, the Trollocs were violently aggressive and simple-minded creatures. Originally, though, they were considered to be failed experiments because even though they were hardy and strong, they were too wild and unstable to function in an army as soldiers. They were capable of reproducing naturally, which meant that the Dark One had an army that was capable of self-replenishing itself instead of having to be created repeatedly in a laboratory. Once the advent of the Myrddraal took place, which we'll discuss shortly, the Trollocs were no longer mindless, rampaging brutes. Well, to be fair, they kind of still were that, but now they had someone to point them that could guide them towards a target and make them function as a proper army. They have been the primary force of the Dark One throughout his various campaigns across the ages since their creation. These carnivorous fiends even hunger for flesh, even if it's of their own kin. Due to their human heritage, they can dream and have souls, but are not able to channel the one power. The Trollocs belong to 12 main bands and numerous other lesser bands. In the TV show, we're shown the Trollocs gorging on the raw flesh of their victims, perhaps to add to their savage nature. However, we know the Trollocs also cook their victims for meat. Sometimes, when supplies are low, their masters might even feed them lower-ranking dark friends to keep them satiated. Myrddraal Fades, eyeless horrors commanding Trollocs. The Myrddraal, or Fades as they are known as in the common tongue, are some of the most feared soldiers of the Dark One. They were created unwittingly through the reproductive process of a Trolloc. It is speculated that when the human strain of a Trolloc is stronger within its unborn fetus, the creature that comes out is a Fade. They do not have any of the bestial features of their parents, but resemble tall men with smooth, sickly white skin, no eyes, and a mouth with jagged rows of teeth. It is said that 5% of Trolloc offspring are Fades. They seem to have a degree of control over their parent species, which allows them to command them during battles and missions. The Fades hold such sway over the Trollocs that outside of wading through deep water, they'll do anything that their offspring command. Fades also have the unique ability to traverse or hide within shadows, making them perfect assassins. They also possess superhuman speed and strength and are proficient in the use of swords. Even if a Fade is dealt a death blow, it continues to thrash around violently in its death throes as if driven by some dark will. It only truly dies when the sun rises. Murdrals have several names by which they are known by in the different lands: Shadowmen, Lurks, Night Runners, the Eyeless, and the Neverborn. No matter what name they're called, one thing is for certain: if a Fade is hunting you, there's no escape. Dragcar, soul-sucking, bat-winged Shadowspawn. A Dragcar is as close to a vampire as you get in the Wheel of Time universe. They resemble ordinary men from afar, but upon closer inspection, one can discern their soulless eyes, deathly pale skin, and a pair of leathery wings. They also have blood-red lips within which they hide their fangs. Unlike the Trollocs and the Fades, the Dragcar aren't fighters. Instead, they're used for assassination purposes. They have the ability to hypnotize their opponents by singing to their victims, after which they kiss them, sucking out their souls in the process, followed by their life. Even a brush of their deadly lips can scar an individual permanently, as they will have sucked out a tiny portion of the soul. This foul act, called the token of affection, is irreversible, and there's no cure for someone who has received it. While these soul-sucking vampires might appear humanoid, they have very little intelligence of their own, and instead rely on the orders of the Fades or Dreadlords and the Forsaken. Golem, shape-shifting assassins immune to the One Power. Of all the servants of the Dark One, none are as frightening as the Golem. Even the vaunted Forsaken, who are chosen of the Dark One, are nervous about their abilities. The strongest of the Shadowspawn, created by the Forsaken Agenor, they were specifically designed to hunt down the Aes Sedai. Only 3 pairs of males and females were created by the Forsaken One, as they themselves were wary of making too many creatures that were immune to the One Power. A Golem feels next to no pain and is impervious to harm through conventional weapons. They don't possess normal body organs and are almost fluid-like within. Thanks to this, they're able to squeeze through tight spaces, making it nigh impossible to escape their clutches. They are able to detect a channeler from quite a distance, and if an individual is wielding the One Power, they can detect that from even further. Like every other Shadowspawn, they feed on humans, particularly their blood. They rend their victims limb from limb and rip out their throats before feasting on them. Golem are said to prefer the blood of a channeler above all else, as the act of killing a person connected to the One Power gives them a euphoric feeling. While they might sound like perfect immortal killing machines, they are in fact not that. The only known weapon that's able to harm them is a fox head trinket given to Matt Cawthon by the Eelfin. It is speculated that if left unchallenged, they have a lifespan of about 700 years. During the Third Age, only one known Golem was active, which was extremely fortunate, for if all 6 were out and about, the story might have had a very different ending. Such is their power. Darkhounds, Shadowspawn dogs that leave burning footprints. The Darkhounds are exactly what their name suggests. Shadowspawns in the shape of dogs or wolves. They're usually the size of horses, and once they catch your scent, it's said that there's no place in the world that they won't track you down to. While they have monstrous claws and fangs, even their blood and saliva is acidic in nature. If one were to come in contact with it, they would die a slow and agonizing death, that is, unless the Darkhounds ripped you to shreds first. Their approach cannot be heard, as they leave no prints on the ground, save on stone. While one might not hear them approach, their stench is unmistakable, as the smell of sulfur follows them wherever they go. They're extremely difficult to slay, just like most Shadowspawn. Outside of power-wrought weapons, killing them through conventional means is a tedious task. There is another breed of Darkhound which are completely immune to normal attacks and can only be killed by using balefire. If a Darkhound were to devour the soul of a wolf, that wolf is transformed into a Darkhound. While it's not known how many packs of these infernal creatures exist, the number is debated to be around 7 to 13 packs. The Darkhound are said to run during the night in a wild hunt with the Dark One as the hunter right behind them. An old wives' tale from the southern lands, perhaps, but no one is brave or foolish enough to verify it, at least none that are still living. Legendary beings / powers. Dragon, the Dragon Reborn, the prophesized savior / destroyer fated to face the Dark One. The Dragon is the title given to the strongest channeler to ever exist in the world. They're supposed to have enough power to either turn the wheel or destroy it. Even though he's presented as the champion of the light against the shadow, there's no obligation for the dragon to save the world. We don't know if the title of dragon was given to the strongest channeler in all the previous ages, but during the Age of Legends, the title was held by Luz Therin Telamon. After a group of channelers discovered an alternate source, they unwittingly loosened the seal to the prison of the Dark One, who was the originator of this new source. In order to contain the growing influence of the Dark One, Luz would attempt to reseal him. However, while he would succeed, he would let the Dark One corrupt the Side-In, which was the raw power that a channeler must control to use their various abilities. This led Luz to go mad along with every other male channeler who had helped him with the seal. They would kill all their loved ones and plunge civilization back by more than 1,000 years. In the Third Age, Rand al'Thor is said to be the reincarnation of Luz and the dragon reborn. Forsaken, immortal channelers who serve the Dark One. Thanks to the Aes Sedai boring into the pattern in search of this new power source that men and women could access equally, unlike the gender-restricted One Power, they had partially released the Dark One from its prison. As its influence grew, the one utopic world of the Age of Legends descended into chaos and madness. Many of the most powerful channelers of the age pledged their allegiance to the Dark One and became his servants. Chief amongst them were 13 channelers who betrayed their own people for various reasons, ranging from nihilism to hunger for power. The War of Shadow that ensued was led by these individuals who were known as the Forsaken. They would go on to commit horrific atrocities and crimes before being sealed alongside their master by the dragon, Luz Therin Telamon. Marvelous verdict! The Wheel of Time combines a number of complex theological and metaphysical tropes in its narrative, making it more than just a mere fantasy series. The influence of the various cultures from the real world is palpable in the works, which makes it easier for a reader to get into and lends to the series being more grounded and accessible despite being fantasy. Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson have given us a world that is so intricately detailed that one feels like they're channeling the One Power themselves and weaving this fantastical world that sucks us right into it. The Amazon TV show has, for its part, done a stellar job of recreating this world for our viewing pleasure. With so much material left to work on for the showrunners, we hope that there are multiple seasons still to come for us to enjoy the Wheel of Time. If you would like us to explore this series further on our channel, do let us know in the comments down below. Tell us who your favorite race is from the series, or let us know about your favorite figures or characters, because we're always looking for ideas for new videos. Thanks for sticking with us right to the end and watching this entire video. For more content like this, be sure to check out our channel where we cover all your favorite TV shows, movies, and anime. If you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Otherwise, it's time to say goodbye. We hope to see you soon on the next one, and until then, stay safe and stay marvelous.